right, everyone, welcome back to the Geospatial Index. We have a special guest, Mobeen Hanid. He's a GIS manager in the industry here in the UK.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, pleasure to be here.
The format we've sort of gone for is that you interview me first and you've got a set of questions, and then I'll turn it around and I've got a set of questions for you. What's the best geospatial networking event you've ever attended?
Okay, so I've not necessarily attended a huge amount. I only got into GIS 2017. This is it was my first job after university. But I have to give out the Esri conference a shout out. It is a good conference, although it is like the standard GIS conference. I think it is a good conference as well because it brings together everyone in the industry that's particularly in London into the same space, and they are showcasing what they're working on, and it's great to be able to know what people are doing in similar sort of situations, how they've attempted to solve problems, what they've done, what they've been able to build, essentially with the same tools that you have at your disposal. I mean, it's especially at an Esri place, everybody's going to be using Esri software, so yeah, and who they've been able to help, you get like a plethora of collaborations. You get people working with river trusts, with police, with local communities, with big corporations, etc. Like the solutions that are being made are just helping all sorts and all different types of people. So in that sense, it's very inspiring.
Yeah, no, I've been to an Esri. I went to Esri User Conference in San Diego 2015, and it was life-changing experience in a way. Also in London, there's GeoMob, which I really encourage people to check out. And the smallest one of all is London Map Up, which
London,
is what I run.
Of course, yes.
Anyway,
I was almost thinking, what's that? I've heard of that one.
Exactly, what's that?
No.
Oh God, I have to do a better job of promoting.
Yeah, I'm sure it would get some traction.
Let's see. So you imagine you've just been to one of these amazing networking events, and you're all inspired. So then the next day you win Powerball, and you have £1 billion to set up the world's best geospatial firm. So what happens in the first 100 days?
Okay, that is a great question, and it really tests me on how much I know about building a £1 billion firm.
Well, you've already got the £1 billion. You just need to make it into a wicked firm.
Yes. I think initially I would go for it may seem like a left field decision, but it may be to buy land in a cheap and cold place so that I can host the data. So data warehouses.
Great answer.
Yeah, I don't know. There's obviously ways you can just rent instances on Amazon or Microsoft or on one of these other big tech firms. But I think to be able to get obviously if you've got £1 billion and you're going to spend it, you want to get some return. You want to be able to keep, and part of the question is this is to be the best geospatial company. So to host and own the data that you own,
definitely
is probably very important to making sure that is successful. I mean, like nowadays everyone knows, like it's almost like we were conned into it, but it's like, oh my god, like Facebook owns our data, and it's like that was the plan. Like it was to always build huge data sets and own it. So I think yeah, that would be my first step, and it would probably be quite a bit of money to take that, but that's the idea of having like cheapish land in somewhere cold. It's not going to be necessarily like an attractive place, so you might save a bit of money there with land possession. But yeah, I think then next I would just probably work upon like producing and acquiring bespoke data sets that get made available via subscriptions. Continue to do deals like that to just keep acquiring data sets, creating data sets that are bespoke to be able to offer that. And yeah, that goes beyond the 100 days, because that would be a continuous mission to just essentially have everything as a
No, but
data
I like
set.
it. You're going for the right foundation there. And it's similar to Esri. You want to have the data sets and the subscriptions to those that underpin as much of the industry as you can. Sounds like what you're going for. I think that's
yeah,
a smart way.
it's a little steal from the old the World Atlas or whatever they call it, but it's a really smart idea what they've got there, because it's made available, and obviously making people subscribe to it as well. Like it's all part of income, but and then I think, because it's 100 days, and I think, well, it's not necessarily my business that the business would exist for only 100 days, but I think it's important to build a foundation in the governments. So my next step would be to look at supporting like local, national governments, and working initially like straight away to sort of create and maintain spatial databases on like their high priority services. So things like public infrastructure, public services, transport links, like demographics, commercial property, water body, like all those sort of things. To really build up a network and understanding of like what those local governments, national governments have. It's basically building your society in data.
Yeah.
And
I love that phrase.
yeah.
I love that phrase.
Yeah.
A societal digital twin.
Yeah. And I think that would be my mission within the first 100 days. It would be to essentially build a data store, data warehouse, and then go for the governments.
I love it. No, yeah, this sounds like a very sensible play, especially when you're operating at that scale. And that's where, the majority of spending comes from in our industry. So yeah, no, that sounds sensible. And I like
but
the
then
idea.
again, like it is, even though that sounds a lot of £1 billion, by the end of that, I'd probably run out of money.
I agree. You could very quickly,
especially going towards governments, like you're going to have to spend a lot more just to talk to them. But I think that would be the way. That would be my ethical way of wanting to take an approach to building a company it's got a lot of money and it's wanting to do good. So yeah.
I was thinking you could also sort of sell a best practice schema for a government GIS, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like you could almost just have like your template for all of the different ministries that a government might have and the geospatial element of those. And it's just like they can just buy the bolt-on for each ministry sort of thing. And it's all just integrated. It's all updated. All the standards are updated from a single point. It's upgraded on a same schedule. And it's just like propagates across all of the governments globally that have subscribed to it. You know what I mean? And it's just like, it's just easy for them. You know what I mean? Because it's just like, they don't have to think about, spending 6 years coming up with their own standards. And if the company was global and had enough government subscribers, then you genuinely, and through annual conferences or whatever continuous process of improvement, you could genuinely say to them, we're literally continually collating best practices that then are fed into our latest schema and data model, if you like, and all the attendant things that hang off of that.
Yeah, I mean that's a perfect world, right? There's all governments working together on it under the same schema. But
I'm sensing a theme here for us geospatial people. we don't really care about all these little governments.
No,
we don't want to work together.
We do, yeah.
One planet at a time, guys. One planet at a time. Come on.
I know, right? People are thinking in countries. We got to think in planets.
What's this? It's too small.
But yeah, that would be my approach for £1 billion.
All right. So leading on from that, another thing such a business may wish to sell is really mind-boggling visualizations. So what are some incredible maps or spatial visualizations that you would learn from that maybe you think should be in art galleries that you'd also like to use as a starting off point to really, for this business to sell amazing spatial visualizations?
This is a good question. Because because now it's touching into the topic of art, and that is just visually pleasing stuff, you know. And it has to go along a theme. So some maps that I possibly would have in an art gallery. I mean, there's like, I can't remember the name of it, but like that first map where you've got two sort of circles. It's probably from like the 1400s or something like that. But you know, it's got like Britannia at the top and things like that. It's got decorate. I think that would be a staple to put into to an art gallery. I think secondly, like it may already be in there. I can imagine there's a similar sort of art piece, but something that has either our solar system, or because solar system would be difficult. You need a big room, but or maybe just the Earth to the moon, like an actual to scale of spatial space between these celestial bodies that are in our single solar system.
I'd love that. It'd be cool to be able
Yeah.
to walk around in a room and see how far Pluto is and how small
Oh
it is
yeah,
compared to
yeah.
the
I
sun.
mean,
Yeah.
you'd have to sign a waiver beforehand, sort of thing. Like, make sure you don't have like
Oops, I walked
heart
into
troubles or
the.
something. Yeah, like you know, you'll be walking for like 40 minutes or something. I don't know, but if you, depending on the scale and whatever how you do it, but if you want to make it so that the planets look dramatic and like a visually pleasing thing, so that they're not just little pins, then you
Yeah.
would need a huge space. But yeah, I mean, I would go to the point of like those types of installations.
That would be a coolest look.
Yeah, I think it would be. I think it would be very like education as well. Like people really get an understanding of like where things are. Like, I mean, that is like our Esri's tagline, like the science of where, but like where things are and like how far away it is when you look into the night sky. Like even the moon, like it's not just out there. Like it's hundreds, thousands of miles away, and to be able to like it as a number, like you just sort of think, okay, hundreds of thousands of miles away. But like when you sort of are able to visualize it, you get a real understanding of not just like how big 100,000 miles is, but like how big a mile is, and
Yeah.
then that helps you be a bit more locally on like where you are in your space and like
Yeah.
what's around you. Like I think it can help to do that. So I think art should obviously have some element of, it should be a talking point. It should be thought provoking. So yeah, it would be around that sort of stuff. But then like maps and things like that. Is that the question? What maps would I
Well,
have in an art gallery?
yeah, it's basically trying to sort of, for those who don't care about GIS, who can't
Mm,
help but be amazed.
yeah,
It's like unquestionably
yeah,
staggering.
yeah. I mean, because again, I think like art should definitely be thought provoking. It should definitely have like, it should tell you a story. And the thing with like when you take the topic of maps, like the story is always agendered. It's always biased. So you
Absolutely.
need to, yeah, you need to be able to show like the clear bias in what you're gonna be exhibitioning. So I would
That's a
have like,
huge point.
yeah, I would have multiple of the world maps just on different projections. You know, you got like Makata and things like that. It's just like all next to each other, or just like Africa or something like that, just showing it on different projections, just so that people can just see like, well, which one is real? Like, this is the one I recognize, but this is also Africa. This is Africa. Like,
Yeah.
you know, just sort of like get them to sort of, like, I kind of like, like disintegrate, remove like their belief of what they know
Yeah.
to get an understanding of like this is what is also like considered what you
Yeah.
see. So I think
No,
that would be
yeah.
what I would hang in an art gallery. It would definitely be something to disrupt what is common belief of spatial information. It wouldn't just be say like this is something pretty. Look at this nice map.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a great answer, and I liked you picking up on the idea of bias, and agendas, because I think that's us little mapping people.
Mm,
We're often paid to do what we do by very powerful organizations who have definitely got an agenda.
yeah.
And the classic one is the national map, like showing, the boundary of a state again to get back
Yeah.
to our
Oh yeah.
rights. Yeah. Anyway, no. Okay. All right. So your £1 billion world's best geospatial firm is starting a data center in Alaska. You are then seeking to dominate all of the governments with subscription services. Excellent stuff. And you've got some ideas about incredible visualizations that you can do with the data in your data center. So suddenly, well, you've been so successful that you've made your way actually to becoming Earth's first president. So
President of the Earth.
since you are a geospatial analyst as well, how do you redraw the world map to heal humanity?
This is Futurama stuff, you know, like Earth president. Oh, well,
I have definitely watched too much Futurama in my time.
Yeah, I won't quite take on the role of Nixon. I'll try and be a good one. But to be honest, it's touching back on like what you were talking about earlier, about that guy. What was it with the Gaia? What was he?
Globia,
Yeah.
Felix Ferrand.
Yeah. I mean, I am president of the Earth, so I guess my word would just be commanding. It doesn't really matter too much if I change minds. I guess they just have to listen. But to be not so dictatory, it would be based upon something like that. Like if my company has been able to build upon its spatial data network and things like that, and be able to show infrastructure of all countries, of all local governments, national governments, it would be around showing our human footprint. And I'm not trying to copy or steal, but that would, I think that's the best way to illustrate the point of like, especially when you're addressing the Earth, the countries of the Earth as well, and the leaders of the Earth. It would be to show like where everything, where all the relationships are, basically. Road networks, especially sea travel. I think like that's always overlooked. Sea and air travel. I mean, I can't remember the website, but there was this website where it just shows like every sea track going on. I'll have to find it and I'll have to send it to you one day, because
yeah, there's also the ones for flights. Yeah,
and it's amazing.
I think I should fess up actually, because it was actually a leading question. Essentially, what I'm getting at with the question is our profession actually damaging humanity in some way with our world maps of all of the worlds, especially the political maps, with all of these boundaries? And you could say, you could make the case, I think, quite easily that a national boundary actually is good. It gives, something that a territory where a certain set of rules apply, for example, democratic ones.
Yes.
At least that section of the population has been protected from dictators. But I'm just wondering, and maybe I confess it is a leading question. I am sort of implying that there is something to be healed by redrawing the world map. Is that true, or am I wrong there? Is there something that Earth's first president could look at there that could be expressed geospatially to bring it back to?
I mean, you just if you're going to go of the approach of just remove all boundaries, like nation borders and things like that, is that the sort of approach you would like to think of healing?
Yeah, I'm wondering if geospatial, as Earth's first president and a geospatial analyst, if there's something that you could do geospatially to contribute to world peace, as cliched as it is to be asking this question, but genuinely. How could geospatial do that? What role could it play?
Well, it's I can't really answer it just on a geospatial sort of like impartial, objective way. I'd have to have it like subjectively. Like I don't think if a map was redrawn without borders, it would have a healing effect.
Yeah.
I think it could possibly have an opposite effect.
Yeah, sure.
In a way, because borders are not just visually, they're in people's minds and brains and their cultures and things like that. And and actually borders can provide a bit of a safety net, especially when you're able to see like that sort of stuff. I know obviously it perpetrates a them versus us like mentality, like just instantly.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe it's my own pessimist view, but like I think a world without, although like yeah, I do believe like we shouldn't. Well, yeah, I do, like in a perfect world I would believe like borders are just not a good thing. We should have freedom of travel, etc., around the world, and we should all get on. But when it comes to actually the practice and reality, like, I don't think it necessarily works so well.
Yeah, I have some maps. Could I just share my screen again just for a minute to get extra context? I agree with you that it could definitely create a whole storm of wars and fighting, yeah, to remove all of the borders. But I think not all borders are created the same, and you can really tell I'm a troublemaker. But this one is, and you were talking about Africa. So this is before European colonization, 7th to 16th century on the left. This is European territorial claims, 1914, and this is after the colonial era, 45 to 90. And then you got Sudan here that's since been split, you know, the usual story. But I guess this is an example of how, because some borders everybody agrees with, and they have a personal relationship with. Others have been imposed. And to me, the current state of these borders matches more closely the European territorial era, colonial era, than the pre-colonial era. So
yeah.
That's, I guess, sorry, I didn't fully unpack all of the details of that question.
No, I no, I think I was looking at it maybe basically just on a like static map, right? This is it. But of course, there's like historical reasons why these borders are put up, and you're probably onto the. I mean, at least language wise, like those countries, that's a great way to split Africa up. I mean, it's not a great way to split Africa up because they'll have their native languages there, but like there will be a dominant, like a French speaking or an English speaking country where that is like partly the national thing. But it's really tricky. I mean, as Earth president, I have to be diplomatic with these things, and I think disrupting too much just to try and put in an education of like what is actually the underlying truth of like what makes up these countries, it's just violent, really. It's just not gonna actually heal much. Yeah, because they've got their own things, really. It's not easy to be able to say. I mean,
yeah. All right. Well, I don't want to box you into a corner at all. Yeah, interesting. It's a thorny topic.
It definitely is. It definitely is.
Maybe beyond the powers even of a president for Earth. Maybe we will need the aliens for that one.
Maybe. I mean,
to galvanize us all.
I wouldn't mind delving further. Maybe if we were just in the pub, but on the podcast, it's just I feel hot.
Yeah, sure. I agree. It's difficult territory. All right. So one thing you were talking about before was different projections or ways of visualizing a continent. So related to that, Makeda has done untold damage, one could say, to public understanding of the size of countries. So which projection do you choose to fix this, and what will you do to convince school book publishers and Google Maps to get on board?
I love that question. Can we just state that again? How badly Makata has done. It's just for the world. Like, it's just ruined it. No one has an idea of what is what and how the size of things. It's just, it's abysmal. And I can't believe it's so old. I can't believe it's like 600 years old and it's just still used today in like modern like technology. Like, that's what the one we go to. It's done very well for itself, but it is a poison.
To me, that one thing says how inadequately our profession is serving humanity.
Yeah. I think it is very true, because like even like in our day-to-day jobs, it's so hard to like convince people and things like this that this is an important thing. And you can base everything like if you have everything, if you just basically have like everything as a GIS foundation, like you just get a more accurate and better understanding of like what you're doing, what it is you're doing. So yeah, down with Makata basically, but without swearing. So yeah, it's done. It's. I mean, people will think like, if you listen to that conversation as a novice, people will be like, what is it? What's wrong with the map? Like, and maybe not quite get to the grips and understanding of like what it has done. But yeah, and like we say, it's a total agendered bias map. It's
To
I
me,
think
it's the Northern Hemisphere. It benefits the Northern Hemisphere.
yeah, oh yeah, entirely. I think it was made for shipping or something like that, but
yeah, it's
you
just
know,
for straight line. Like, it makes navigation easy when you're. It came from the age of exploration, if that's
yeah,
what the correct term, and you could easily plot a straight line and navigate on that straight line between 2 points, and like you can totally understand how people would fixate on that.
yes,
Given that the way the world is these days is an expression of the success of that era of navigation. But I think the best way to characterize the damage is that Greenland looks like it's the same size as Africa and bigger than Australia, when
yeah,
it's like 1/14 the size.
yeah. I
And
mean
Russia,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I mean that and Antarctica is just because the Antarctica one is to me it's it's the worst thing about it. Like Greenland, Africa, like yes, is they're out of proportion, but when we have a conversation of how much ice is melting in Antarctica, and people look at it and think, well, there's just so much there, like it's clearly the biggest landmass on the planet.
Oh, I've never
It's
thought about
like,
that.
no, it's not. It's only slightly bigger than Australasia. Like it's not. We're not. It's not a massive source of ice just because it looks like that at the bottom of the
I
screen. I mean, if
never
there's
thought about that.
yeah, I feel like that is possibly the most damaging thing. If I could, I think I maybe have the tab open. Like, if I could share my
Yeah,
screen
yeah.
on it.
So you're saying it
Um,
essentially affects people's understanding of the consequences of climate change?
that's that. Well, yeah, that's in a to take it to like a contemporary like teaching of what it is it's doing. I would say, yeah, that's possibly something that it could be having, because people will look at this map and just go like, oh yeah, that's right, because look at the size of this thing. Look at this.
Right.
This is
Yeah.
you can fit all of the land mass
Yeah.
of Asia, Europe in here.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just not true.
Yeah.
This thing is only just bigger than Australasia.
Yeah.
You know,
You would never realize that.
you wouldn't.
I didn't know that.
No,
Wow.
you'd sit there and think, wow, it's huge. Like
And the
you
same for
could,
Greenland. It looks like there's
yeah.
another huge sheet of ice up
It's
there. Yeah.
yeah, and that is obviously, we should state that that's the problem with the Mercator projection, is that the poles are exceptionally distorted and really stretched, whereas the sort of center area is sort of shrunk in. Yeah, how it's continued as like our main map and projection is just, it's beyond me. But okay, so I can, yeah, I'll just come back.
Now that was
uh,
a good accompaniment. Yeah. To the
yeah,
question. Yeah.
and that's what I think. Like the question, sorry, you stated was
Well, how do we
is it
basically get
the
people on
damage
board?
to public understanding? That is what I believe. Like the damage to public understanding. People do not understand like genuine land mass size.
Another one
Yeah,
for me, it's like it's the power aspect as well. Like, because it's easy to associate a large area or a large with power,
yeah,
and all Russia especially is already massive, but it looks even bigger because of this distortion. And the same with the US and China, and
yeah.
yeah, the countries below the equator, not so large. So I and there was actually a West Wing episode about
Yes.
this problem. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
So
was reading about that as well. I think they were saying like they want to change the maps basically.
yeah.
Did you watch that episode? Is that something you've seen?
Yeah. 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 So it's kind of
Yeah,
like a
but
classic thing in our industry, so I want to cover
mm,
it.
Yeah, no, I'd like to see that episode now. I was touched on it and I was like, oh, I wouldn't mind checking that out, see what their arguments for and how it sort of all concluded and panned out. I've never actually watched The West Wing. I think it was a bit before my time, but yeah, it's quite funny that they decided to take that route as one of the episodes. But yeah, it's,
So in
so
summary, it sounds like your argument in favor or against the Mercator projection once and for all is that it diminishes our understanding of climate change, and makes it look like it doesn't properly communicate the fragility of Antarctica or of the poles.
yeah, it just doesn't help public understanding of their world, of the idea of land mass, of the idea of like the vastness, extensiveness, how it, because from a Mercator projection of habitable land on that, you look at it and you say like, well, we could apply everything here and there, but these places are massive. They're so big. So it just doesn't help people to get an understanding of like why things are where they are and how they've been able to succeed. Because a lot of the reason why societies are like developed in like the Western world is not a lot of the like one of the reasons is like it's not such a big land mass. It's actually easier to be able to put these things in place.
That is a very interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, but when you take this huge land mass, it's hard. It's very hard.
Yeah.
So it doesn't help in that sense. So like to go on to the next part of the question, like what would I prefer to have as a projection? I mean, it's just the classic, like either the Gal Peters or the Robinson projection. Like they're just a bit more like realistic. I mean, there's obviously still some distortion. It's hard to get a perfectly accurate map, and I guess it does need to be, it needs some visual pleasing, especially like if you're going to be using it in Google Maps. I think it's hard to get it like that, but at least that gives an understanding of like a little bit better on like mass size of continents on this planet.
Essentially to squeeze the map, the top and the bottom.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Pretty much, and then just extenuate the middle, because
that's what the Gal Peters one does, right?
Yeah, it sort of makes
tends to make it quite long, or high.
I think, and that's the thing. It like that's what's so visually displeasing about that map. But it's because we're so used to a Mercator projection that when you see it, when it's actually like, when it looks real, that's what it looks like. You're like, oh, this just looks wrong, and that is a problem because it's more accurate, right? We're in such a way now that the more accurate and like actual rational look at it doesn't look right. That's a trouble. That's a problem. But okay, so how I would try and like get schools and Google Maps to take this on, I mean, it's a tricky one. For Google Maps, I think I would just try and say to them, I'd go on the argument of integrity. Like it's like you're providing a service. Like, do you want to have integrity on it, because what you're providing is not accurate in terms of projection. That would be one of my ways to go about it. I mean, I don't think it's difficult for them to be able to actually change their projection, because it's only one thing that they have to change, and it's rolled out everywhere. So if they want to be an accurate an accurate company that gives away good information, accurate information, then that would be my argument for them.
I agree. Yeah. Simple. That's an accuracy. I agree.
Yeah, I think they would actually possibly listen and take that in. But again, I don't think they don't know this already.
To me, that just comes across as laziness.
Yeah, it is laziness, but it's also like, it's also just how we have this culture that the Mercator projection is the world map. So like, if you you and I, for example, we set up our own company like exactly the same footprint as Google Maps, people would look at the map and like, it just looks weird. That's like their first instant reaction. They're just like, well, this just looks weird. I just don't get it, because it's just not like basic understanding and common knowledge that like this is a better representation of what you're looking at, basically.
When in fact the Mercator projection itself is a weird map.
Yeah, it is. It doesn't look anything like what any of these countries look like.
It's for a remarkably specific and uncommon use case these days of someone setting out on a 4-masted wooden ship for a multi-month voyage.
Exactly. I mean, even the UK looks quite big on the MacArthur project, and like I don't think it's that big in real life. It's quite a small, but it looks like a good sizable landmass. But yeah, schools is just tricky. I mean, like it's all funding. It's not just one simple solution to change. It's a bit more expensive. It's actually probably more expensive to change school education than it is to help to change Google's thing. But if with an unlimited supply of money, or if I had that £1 billion on the Powerball, I guess I would just go towards funding changing all the maps in textbooks and maps that are on walls, etc., and just a new syllabus for that, and that would be the way forward. I think if you just throw money at it, it would probably help, because I think that's all. I mean, that's how you build a syllabus. You buy it.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Sounds like a nice systematic approach. And yeah, I appreciate your reasons there. Okay. So we're carrying on a theme here from between the interviews. So what's your favorite map of the Anthropocene?
My favorite map of the Anthropocene. Is that just from 1950 onwards?
Yeah, or just ways to visualize this new epoch after the Holocene. So I suppose the classic one of the Holocene was that was the new hole basically after the ice sheets melted, as far as I can recall. So a classic one of that might be somehow visualizing, the receding of the ice bridges between, Russia and Alaska, or, Australia and New Guinea. What might you do to express the Anthropocene, or what is a good existing map of it? I hope I'm not asking another leading question.
I feel like you might be.
Oh my God, I'm a bad interviewer.
Well, I mean, personally, like, I quite like. Well, I don't like them, but the heat maps of the world. Yeah, it's not like a personal favorite, but I think it's an important one when you're talking about the Anthropocene. You obviously need a comparison map, so you can pick one from whatever epoch to just show the differences of mainly the heat, like the increase in the poles and the increase around the equator. If you're going to be political about it, that's a good one, I think, as because it's climate change based. I think that would be one that I would I like. But I've always liked light networks and things like that. Build up of those things, especially in what's called like developing countries now, like India, Korea, things like that, where it's just like the 60s or whatever, 70s, it was, and boom, like 10 years later, like there's just like lights everywhere. I think those are some of my favorite maps. I think I saw the road network one of Australia actually maybe sometime last year. I did a presentation on maps, just like a basic one, and yeah, just to be able to see, like, again, I love the relationship between like where things are, like, and you can just see where cities are built. You just see where people are, like how they're situated, and then like sort of you can look at the center of Australia and you can count the sort of roads because there's so few, and it just gives you an instant understanding that, like, well, people aren't there, like, and you just you just personally, you can just sort of think then, like, what would be there for people not to be there, sort of thing, and what wouldn't be there so people aren't there, and then you just get a great understanding of like space and relation and things like that. So yeah, when in terms of anthropic, like, characteristics and things like that, then it's light one's road networks and possibly the heat maps as well.
Yeah, I like the heat one too. Yeah, that basically is it, really. You know,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
kind of the consequence
quite
of all of it.
it's pretty bold. It's stark. It's got one message,
Mm,
and it's frightening as well. But it's it's funny to say that it's a good map. It's a good map to like illustrate like what's going on in our times.
yeah, yeah. When you think about it, it's kind of scary that we're even talking about this. Like, yeah. But anyway,
Yeah, I mean the thing is, it's just like it's not affecting those. 'Cause I remember a few years back, I think it was when I was at university and I was at some sort of lectures, and like refugees was like a big topic, and basically it was like war refugees based upon those.
mm,
And I just remember like either a lecturer saying like something like, yeah, there's a lot of displacements of these war refugees, and like, you know, certain countries have taken in 1 million people, and that's like,
mm.
but
I do
it ma
remember that was something
yeah,
everyone was discussing a while ago. Yeah, especially when
yeah,
they're
yeah,
going into Europe. Yeah,
yeah, I think
from Middle
it's,
East. Yeah,
yeah, I think it was Syria.
yeah.
Um, but
That's
it's
when I was in Kuwait,
right.
the
Gosh,
other side of it. The Brexit happened when I was in Kuwait. The vote.
Jesus, right. Uh, but yeah, I think it was, yeah, I think it was the Middle Eastern, yeah, refugees. But I just remember him just saying something like, well, this is a sort of manageable output like of refugees, because because war is sort of man-made, but like once once you have climate refugees,
Eh,
this is they're leaving places that aren't just like destroyed, they're inhospitable, you can't
mm,
live there, they're underwater, they're barren, nothing grows, and the places where they will come from are exceptionally, well, not except, I wouldn't say exceptionally, but they could be poor countries with dense
yeah,
populations,
yeah,
and a climate refugee is going to be sort of 10 times the amount of like a war refugee,
right. I
and they're
haven't thought
just
about
gonna,
that before.
yeah, and they're just gonna have to come to hospitable areas. It's not like we can, even if we wanted, even if like Western governments wanted to, and they were like, well, it's fine, we'll just give you 600, 700 billion pounds, just build your infrastructure after the war, etc., trillions of pounds, like it's still inhospitable, nothing grows there, so they can't live there anymore, so they have to come to hospitable places, where they can live,
No,
and then everything becomes more dense. So that's an even bigger problem. So when you look at the heat maps and things, the places where it's really getting hotter are places that don't necessarily have good infrastructure to be able to defend and mitigate against these things. They are just possibly slowly, and it's not just heat. Like there's a good book by Bill McGuire, who's like a UCL lecture called Waking the Giant, and it's like how like an increase in temperatures is just going to trigger natural hazards like earthquakes,
yes,
hurricanes,
yeah. We're
tsunamis, all
seeing
the,
evidence of that with all these
yeah,
fires. The latest being in Hawaii.
wildfires. Exactly. I mean, we get that. We had like an earthquake tremor in the UK like last year or something like that. It's just like this is like we have tornadoes and things like that. We're getting slow. Like, I mean, there's small examples, but there are some examples of what would be classed as extreme weather. But then the east coast of like the United States, every year there's a hurricane, and
Mm,
this is like the initial sort of sites of those sort of things. Um, like Hawaii right now has experienced like a horrible wildfire, and again, it's possibly a country that didn't have like
yeah,
defenses in place for
yeah.
this sort of stuff, and that's the trouble. Like the more and more natural hazards occur, the more they'll go to places that don't have defenses, that don't have like a plan in place to stop this sort of stuff.
Mm,
So
yeah.
that's when you get
So
climate
these disasters,
refugees.
yeah, and coupled with high population density, I guess it implies that yeah, the consequences of changing climate could be multiplied. Yeah,
Yeah,
or they're multiplied over uh, a huge, a significant proportion of humanity. Yeah, and I never realized before, but you're right. Yeah, there could be refugees and migration of an unprecedented scale.
Yeah, and it would be instant, you know.
Mm.
It would be suddenly, and like especially an example of a flooding or a natural hazard, like just destroying something, because again, like the tectonic scale it doesn't have a limit. You know, we could still experience massive earthquakes, super earthquakes that just rip through. So, I mean, this is speculation. I'm not a geophysicist, and I don't know if climate change is necessarily affecting higher intensity earthquakes, but there's been evidence lately of like big 9.1, 9.7 like earthquakes that are occurring more
I'd like to
frequently
look at that.
today.
Yeah, I'd like to see a chart. Okay. All right.
There is this app called QuakeFeed. I used to have it. I don't have it anymore. I had it a lot at university because I was studying a lot of physical geography, a lot of those sorts of stuff. And it's just a database that just like gives you information of every earthquake that's happening around the world every time. There's earthquakes all the time, like, but they're like 1.2, 2.4, whatever, etc., and things like that. I think I used to get notified when it was above 6, but that will have a database of like, you know, it possibly showing you like a distribution of possibly more higher tectonic higher earthquakes on a Richter scale that are occurring at a higher rate. And I guess it doesn't need to be so huge, but if it's happening in a higher frequency, that's less time for people to rebuild, less time for, you know, a respite.
That's also a good point. Yeah, I was just having a quick Google about the link, and I found between climate change and earthquakes, and I found something from NASA. But yeah, they said it's complicated. Yeah, nice. That's an angle I hadn't thought of either. Okay, yeah, well, so there's some good coverage there overall of the broad population scale and regional impacts of the Anthropocene and how maps or geospatial could characterize its consequences there. Yeah, I think that's a good response. Another broad population scale, as we get towards the end of these questions, phenomenon was or issue recently was COVID. So did geospatial really help in the COVID response? I'm wondering if you have any brief observations about that. It's a provocative question.
It's a great question. It is provocative as well, but and it depends on how you mean help. I mean, yeah, we were able to see like COVID like across the world, in great dashboards and things like that. But like emphasis on the help. Yeah, it's like the collaborations and like sharing of data, like sort of the expertise and like technology. It needed to like be sort of expanded to use geospatial techniques, I think.
I heard there was a huge team behind that dashboard, and it was a big struggle for them. And they had to verify all of the data before they just put it up. They didn't just randomly accept whatever data was given to them by whatever government, you know, was reporting on their statistics. And yeah, I didn't realize. I just, you know, thought, you know, they'd get a bunch of web feeds from health departments around the world.
If only it was that simple to just stick APIs in and then bang, you've got your bespoke data dashboard and things like that. But yeah, it's just in response to helping COVID, I think it did help us understand like the infection movement and things like that. It's a long time ago now. It's weird to say that, but COVID was 3 years ago, and I have to take myself back to, you know, our responses, and it was, I think, in the sense of it being a pandemic, like it's hard to be in front of it. So we were always just sort of maybe a yard or two behind, or just like sort of like being able to just track rather than having a way to respond and react. But yeah, it help. I think it helped us to see the virus. Yeah.
Maybe in a way that we didn't have back during Spanish flu 100 years before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll take it as it did.
It did, yeah, because be able to see like big I guess I guess it's more like our responses weren't necessarily helpful sometimes, like but yeah, we were able to see like hotspots. We were able to see. I mean, that app, the NHS app, that would ping you and say like, you've been in contact. Like that is GIS, and it's a great use and exercise of GIS. It was a good app. I mean, people have their issues of constantly being tracked.
And there were a few
things,
of those too. Yeah, like when I was in Qatar, and during late 2020, early 21, and they also had an app, a similar one that notified you, and you had to stay indoors or isolate yourself if it told you. Yeah, okay. So
and that probably did help. That probably did help because people would listen to that and they would isolate and shield themselves when they were infectious. So we did have some good examples of helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'll put a tick against that one. All right. Okay, so final question. In the UK, it's possible to do a geospatial apprenticeship. So what character traits, skills, ambitions, and the like would you recommend someone have if they want to do this apprenticeship?
Nice. I think you got to be looking to want to make a story because you're playing with data a lot. And I think it's good to have that as an end goal. Like no matter what it is that you're going to be working in, you need to be able to have the ability, or it's good to have that skill, the ability to be able to tell a story with ones and zeros. I think I wouldn't say I'm necessarily the best storyteller, and but I think I can recognize that is really what helps people in data to help, because data isn't a decision-making tool. It's a decision-making sort of, it's a helpful, well, it is in a way, but it doesn't make the decision. You have to be able to tell the story to get people who do make the decisions. So you have to be able to tell a story if you want to be able to get into this sort of thing as well. Especially if you're at an apprenticeship level, you're going to be bombarded with vast data sets. So to be able to sift through it to get whatever it is that you're trying to get, that's important.
I like that response because geospatial would be perceived as being quite a technical discipline, and maybe people wouldn't anticipate having a more qualitative, artistic message that after you've even having mastered all these technical skills of how to manage a database, how to do analyses, even after all of that, you still have to be able to assemble a story to transport that data.
Yeah. In better words, I mean, I got a tongue twisted in that, but that is the point. But then you do have to have a technical side. You have to be able to be a bit of a problem solver, especially if data sets are not coming in what you need. And that is most likely what's going to be happening with apprenticeships. They'll be getting multiple different data sets. So to be able to be a bit sort of determined with it to get to what you want it to be, that's important. But yeah, I think when it comes to data, the main thing is that you're able to look at it and see the relationships and then to communicate that.
Yes. Okay. No, that's a nice summary.
Mm.
Great. Well, we got there.
Yeah, we did get there. We did. There's obviously a lot of other qualities that you would need in an apprenticeship. But I think there's a good one for me to just, I believe that one quite true.
No, yeah, that's a powerful message. And I like all of these episodes end on this question.
Cool.
Yeah, and I feel like we're building up a bit of a knowledge bank for people from our industry, passing on to the next generation. So thanks for that message.
No problem. I hope I haven't copied anyone or anything like that then.
No, it's a new one, and it's fine to reinforce things too. So
great. Yes, true.
You were talking about patterns, so
yes,
the apprentices listening to this can find those patterns. Yeah.
Very true. Well, it was great, Will. I really enjoyed that.